Yo, Nabri Bookmak. My name is Noel and I'm here in Ramingining to talk about small engine training. We have a lot of small engines in all our communities, so we need to learn how to look after them properly so that they're reliable and they last a long time. We'll be doing all these things. The Yungal guys will be showing them, and we'll show you in the video how to check these things so that Nimarangi, it's very important, military. What we're going to be talking about now is if you're going to use a mower, all the things that you need to check before you use that mower. And you should do this every time. Don't just do it once every now and again, because you don't know if the last person or the person before that didn't do it, and maybe the oil's getting low. But if everybody does it every time, then we know it's going to be main muck. So there's 5 things. Remember, 5 things. Remember that. Have you seen that ad on the television when they're teaching children to stay safe in the swimming pool? Do the 5, stay alive, Nimarangi or buying? Yo. So we got 5 things. So the 5 things are, first thing we do is we check the fuel to make sure there's enough fuel in there. Then we check the oil, and I'm going to talk more about the oil yalala. And then we check to make sure the air cleaner's in place. Very important, because if we haven't got the air cleaner, the motor's not going to last very long. It's going to wear out very quickly. Billy Jingama, throw him in the rubbish tip. Waste of money. And the next thing we're going to have to do is turn the fuel tap on, and then we're going to start it. So that's the 5 things that we're going to do. So the first thing we're going to do is check the oil, the fuel, which is very easy. All we're going to do is take the fuel cap off, and you have a look in there. Is there enough in there? It's a little bit low. So if you're going to go and mow the lawn for half an hour, you don't want to start and after 5 minutes it runs out of fuel. So we would put some fuel in there. The next thing we do is check the engine oil. Nimarangi, you know how to check the engine oil? If you take it, unscrew the engine oil and have a look. Have a look. Now that's got darawa. That's too much. Now let me show you where it should be. Nimarangi should be, say, up to about there. If there's no oil on there, yakamain muck, we must not use that mower. We must put oil in there first. So this one's got a little bit too much oil in it, but we're not going to worry about it. This is okay. If you come and there's a lot, it's yindi, there's too much. Often that's caused by somebody leaving the fuel tap on. The fuel runs from the fuel tank down into the engine, and it raises the level of the oil. And if that happens, you must drain the oil out and put new oil in there, because when the petrol gets in the oil, it makes it thin, and it's no good. It doesn't work properly. So now, remember what the next one is to check? Air cleaner. The air cleaner's there, so we've got to make sure if we go there and it's not on there. I've seen this in a number of communities, and this is the Yakamain Makdawo. I've seen in some communities where there's no air cleaner, and they're using the mower like that, and that's the Yakamain Makdawo, military, because it spoils the engine very quickly. That one's not too bad. If it's really dirty, we get a new one and put a new one on there. Because out in the community, when we're doing the grass, cutting all the grass, there's a lot of dust and sand, and that gets in there and blocks the air filter. That one, see how that one's got to go that way? It won't fit that way. See where the holes are? So it can only go on the right way. So that one goes on there. So never ever run the mower, any engine without an air cleaner. So fuel, oil, air cleaner. Now the next one is the fuel tap. The last person who used it should have turned the fuel off. Robert, do you want to check to see if that fuel's on? Yeah, push it forward this way, towards me. Now that's the fuel on. If you're not sure whether it's on or off, if you look at them, so Yakamangi, I don't know whether it's on or off. You look at, say that's the fuel pipe, the fuel's flowing through there. If the fuel tab is across there, it means the fuel can't get through, it's blocking it. Now this is the same on all small engines. So what you've got to do is you turn it so that this part here lines up with the fuel line. That means the fuel can pass through. See on that one down there, it's like that?
Yep.
That means it's off. So when it's like that, it's on. Now whenever you use these small engines, you really should always turn that fuel tap off. In the motor car doesn't have a fuel tap because the fuel tank in the motor car is down here. And there's a pump, and it pumps it from the fuel tank up to the engine. But on this motor, because it doesn't have a fuel pump, they have a tank which is above. See how the fuel level is, the carburetor's down here, the fuel's up here, so it feeds in by what's called gravity. So the fuel runs in by gravity, but the problem is if you don't turn that off when you're finished, I've seen it here in this community when I worked here as a mechanic, a number of engines, somebody had left the tap on, the fuel had all run down here while I was standing there, and they couldn't start the engine. The sump was full of petrol. Okay, so now we've done everything. We've checked the fuel, we've checked the oil, we've turned the tap on. That mower is ready to start. Now another thing that I need to tell you is very important. Sometimes we've got to check the blades. Now this one doesn't have any blades on it, but when you check the blades, you must never ever turn it over on its side. Don't do this one. Yucca main muck. There's no blades on that one. The way that you must always do it is push this one down here and roll it down like that to get to the blades. You know, point this one here to the sun, point him up. That won't hurt the engine. But do it the other way. I've seen some people do it this way, tip it right over that way. That's yucca main muck. It's going to spoil the mower. Okay, so now we can try and start it. Okay, once it starts, there's two things you need to check. First of all, no bad noises. That sounds main muck, that sounds good. And also, not a lot of smoke. If there's a lot of smoke coming out of here, if it's blue smoke, it's burning oil. The engine is worn. It's sick. The engine is sick. It's sick, yeah. So that tells you that the engine is sick. So all you can do is make sure there's no oil leaks around anywhere and keep the oil checked. Because once it gets to that stage, there's nothing you're going to be able to do out here for it. The ring, what it means is the piston rings inside are nearly worn out. Now if you sometimes see black smoke coming out here and not running very well, that means either the air cleaner's blocked or there's something wrong with the carburetor and it's running what we call too rich. Black smoke out of here means it's running too rich. Now what I want to do now is I want to talk about the oil. The oil has one main function, and that is to lubricate all what we call all the parts of the engine. And so if you've got two bits of metal rubbing together, what happens? Hot gets very, very hot, and it wears out, and eventually it'll weld itself together. It'll get that hot, it'll weld it together like when you're using the welding machine. So that's what the oil does. The oil keeps moving parts away from each other so they don't rub together. Because in here there's lots of parts turning and going backwards and forwards, going past other bits of metal, and so we've got to stop those parts from touching. And that's all the oil does. It keeps the moving parts away from each other. Now in this motor, and in normal motor car, and all four-stroke engines, there is, as you know, there's oil in here that sits down the bottom of the engine in what we call the sump that holds all the oil. What the oil does It keeps all the moving parts away from each other so it doesn't get hot and wear out. The oil's in the bottom. There's a pump down there that pumps all the oil all around the moving parts of the engine, and it's the same as our heart. You know, our heart pumps all the blood all the way around our body. Well, that's the oil pump does the same. Now in a two-stroke engine, there's no oil pump. So we can't put oil in a two-stroke and have it pump around. So that's why in a two-stroke engine we've got to put the oil in with the petrol so that the oil can go around the engine, lubricate all the parts, and it goes with the petrol. So two-stroke, four-stroke has a sump where we check the oil. Two-stroke, no sump, so therefore we've got to mix the petrol, the oil in with the petrol. Very, very important. If you don't put oil in with the petrol, it'll blow up. Billy Jingama. Very quickly, bundi. And it's the same in your outboard motors. If you've got a two-stroke outboard motor, you must put oil in with the petrol, and you must use special oil. You've got to use two-stroke, you've got to use outboard oil in outboard motors.
How the engine is cooling?
Okay.
Because with the car, they got radiator. And gapu.
Yep.
And with this one, how come this one got no gapu?
Main mark, good question. So inside the engine, there's a big fire. There's petrol in there and air, and the petrol's burning, and it's making power strokes on the engine. That's what makes the engine go round. So it's going to get hotter and hotter and hotter. In the motor car, we have the radiator and we have a water pump, and the water pump pumps all the water out of the radiator through the engine, and it takes all the heat away. The heat goes into the radiator, the air blows through the radiator and blows that heat away. Now, in the air-cooled engine, which is the mower, see all these fins here? That's an air pump. All these fins here, and as the engine spins round and round, it sucks the air in there, and it hits those fins and it throws it out, and it makes pressure. And then when this cowling, the cowling is on the engine like this, the air is forced over all these are called fins, and the heat in the engine is coming out of the engine and spreading through the engine, coming out all these fins. When the air blows over it, it takes all the heat away and blows the heat away. So this is air cooled. In the motor car we have gupple to cool the engine. So that's why, see this here, we've got to keep these holes clean. See these holes here? If they become blocked, those holes there become blocked with all grass and everything, get the hose and clean it out. Otherwise it blocks the air from going in there to cool the engine. Yo, Dawo Bilina. So it's very important that we look after all this equipment, all these small engines out here. It's a little bit like us. We want to live a long, happy life. We have to be very careful how we look after ourselves. And it's the same with all these engines. We've got to make sure that they always have oil in them, and that we don't do anything with them that we shouldn't do. Don't treat them badly, be rough or anything. So remember the 5 checks. Every time you go to use an engine, make sure you do all these checks. Don't think that somebody else has done them. This should be done every time. So when you go to a motor, make sure it's got the fuel and the correct fuel. Make sure it's got enough oil in it. If you're not sure what oil it should be, ask somebody who might know. That's Buying or Murray. Not everybody knows everything. We've all got to ask somebody sometimes for help. That's Buying or Murray. The third thing is make sure the air cleaner's there in place, because without the air cleaner, the engine is going to wear out too soon, very quickly. And then we've got to make sure the fuel's turned on. And also remember, when you finish using it, make sure you turn that fuel tap off. So if the fuel's on, then you can start it. And remember, if the engine doesn't go, it can only be one of 3 things. Any engine only needs 3 things to run. It needs petrol or diesel, it needs spark, or it needs a means of setting the fuel on fire. It's a little bit different in diesel engines, but if it's a petrol engine, it'll have a spark plug. And the third thing is we must have compression. We can get a bit of an idea of whether it's got compression there by just pulling the recoil starter, and we should have resistance to pulling the engine over. So, main muck, chut chut book muck.